Hello and welcome to another episode of the 4Q podcast. My name is Sheena Shuey, and as always, this podcast is sponsored by my two businesses, Savasana Collective, Holistic Psychology, Social Work and Coaching, and Therapist VA, where we help health professionals and therapists build, grow and start their private practice business journey so they can have a life that they love without the burnout. So in this episode, I speak to one of my amazing, incredible, wonderful, energetic business coaches, Steph Gorton. Now, in this episode, you are going to get so many gems through Steph's story. And I think the biggest one that as therapists, a lot of us know, but it's really good to hear within a story is the body keeps score. And I think a lot of us ignore that. You know, our bodies will keep score if we're taking care of our minds, our bodies, our spirit, our energy, if we're setting boundaries or not, if we've processed things or not, if our environment, which includes our relationships, our workplaces, our businesses, if they're working for us or not, our body is a really good indicator of if that's working or not. So your body will keep score, and it can manifest as anxiety symptoms, ADHD symptoms, depression symptoms, all the things that we talk about. But of course, we all know when we're feeling really stressed, our immunity's down. And so a lot of the times, right, when we're in the middle of a big project or a big launch or something that feels seemingly important, we get a bit sniffly or sick because our body is like, hey, this is too much. And then it can take up another level where we just get really sick, really exhausted. And so many of the clients I work with end up with that chronic feeling of being stuck in fight or flight. And that ending up as burnout, right? And one of the first ways I know that somebody has been stuck in fight or flight for so long is having organ issues, skin issues, kidney issues, liver issues, bowel issues. So many women will say, yeah, when I ask them, like, have you got IBS symptoms, irritable bowel symptoms? Absolutely. I've got stomach issues. I can't eat gluten. I can't eat this. I can't eat that. So many things. And that's your body, again, a lot of the time, not processing things how it should be, not functioning as well, and it's that balance of chi, right? It's that balance of mind, body, spirit together that all affects this. So without further ado, Steph's story is going to highlight this amazingly. And, Steph can introduce herself, but you'll hear she's got this incredible energy, much like a lot of the high-achieving women I work with, where that energy feels boundless, seems boundless. And like I've spoken in other episodes, is that double-edged sword, because it really is a big part of our success too. But in Steph's story, you'll hear how we all have to find our limits in our own ways and our own capacities at different stages and different times of life. So here is an amazing episode with the one and only Steph Gorton. If you love it and you'd love to share something that you learnt from this, feel free to reach out to Steph or myself. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let's get into today's episode with Stephanie Gorton. Oh my gosh, Steph, I'm so happy you are here for the podcast today. How are you?
Hi, I am so honored. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. I mentioned before, I'm fangirling a little bit, and it's just because you have got this really incredible energy. And I know that you're getting familiar with my business because we're doing some business coaching together. And I work with a lot of female leaders, entrepreneurs, content creators.
these women have big energy, and you're able to manage that big energy. So I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to talk to Steph, because, that's a really unique skill, wouldn't you think?
Well, yeah, for sure. And like it's funny. I've always been complimented on my energy. It's something that people often it's probably one of the first things that people will lead with when they try and compliment me, which I'm so honored about. Like that's such a beautiful thing to say to somebody. Like, I really love your energy. You've got such big energy. It's really interesting because I think that until you get acknowledged on it, it's not something that you know that you have. But I have been like this my whole life. So it's not something that I step into because I'm a leader. It's not something that I step into since I've been in business. Like, if you knew me when I was 17, I was exactly like this. If you knew me when I was 6, I was like this. So, I've never lacked in the confidence department. I have always been an extrovert by nature. So for me personally, this big energy it's really innate. And if anything, until I stepped into business, I actually thought my energy was limitless. And then I found out it wasn't.
Well, before we get ahead of ourselves as well, we've already hinted that you're the big squeeze in business. But for those of you who aren't familiar with who you are, could you give us a little bit of a spiel on who you are and all things Steph?
All things Steph. So I'll lead with who I am as a woman first. So I am a new wife. I have just been married, which is so exciting. I am a only child, so grew up pretty spoiled and really loved on by my parents. I'm very, very fortunate for that. I am a dog mum. I have 2 big Rottweilers, 2 big babies who are my world. And I'm a friend, a daughter, a confidant to a lot of people. And I've always been that person for people, always been somebody that people lean on. And my whole life, all through high school, all through, our early 20s, my friends would come to me. I was the person, my colleagues would come to me. I was the person that people would come to for advice and feedback. And I think I had this way of being able to read people's situations from a really external perspective. And so it's no wonder that I ended up being a coach. I coach business, but I would say that that's the least of what I do. I think that coaching in any form is really helping people to uncover the power that's within themselves. And especially for women specifically, I think that we are in this really beautiful stage of humanity where women are starting to step up and out. However, we're still shackled by so much preconditioning and so many shackles from the past. And I think my life's purpose in this lifetime is to help women break those shackles and break free and actually start to live fully in their own power.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, what an intro. I loved that. That's so good. And I know what I love about you is when we first started this podcast, and I dropped it for a little bit, we used to ask people what their love languages are, because that's a big part of the relationship counseling I do. And you even incorporated the love languages into your business, which I love, because I've encouraged people to do that, and some people are like, how do I do that? So first of all, what's your love language? And can you just share a little bit about how you share that in your business? Because I loved that.
Sheena, I'm so sorry. You're going to have to edit this out. I'm really, really sorry for that in advance. But my cleaners just started.
So tell me about that.
So my love languages are, my number one love language is words of affirmation. And acts of service would be my secondary love language as a woman, as a person. And so it's funny, my husband's love language is touch, and it's probably my lowest love language, which is frustrating. Because when I'm trying to love him, I have to touch him.
Yeah, it's always interesting getting people to meet each other's love language when it's not your default, it's not your natural, and you have to consciously do it.
Yeah, he's like, can you give me a head massage? I'm like, the last thing I want to do right now is touch you, but I actually really want to make sure that you feel valued and loved. So yes, I will do it. But I really do try. I try and touch on not only the 5 love languages for my clients, but also the 5 human needs, which I learned through Tony Robbins. And so the 5 love languages, of course, like when you would know because you're a new client, but we touch on, making sure that you feel really supported, that you have everything you need. We have a really intricate welcome guide that touches on all the words, including what our vision, mission, values are all in there, all of the rules of engagement. It's very word heavy. We also have a quality time. So, our welcome call is really about that quality time. So, you get that connection with me personally. And then we obviously send a little gift when you first join, for people who enjoy gifts. And we do that all the way throughout our clients' experience with us. So there are multiple ways and multiple times throughout your experience where we will touch on those love languages. But additionally, we also like to touch on the 5 human needs, which are significance, certainty. We also need a level of surprise and the opposite of certainty, which is uncertainty, so that we don't get bored of things. So we try and touch on a mix of both of those throughout the program.
Amazing. Well, I love that. And it's such an inspired way of working, which I love because it has that spontaneity, which you have so much. Like, I can feel that spontaneous energy from you. I know you're probably like, everybody talks about my energy. But
I love it. I'll take it.
So let's get into that first area, which is, we've reflected on who you are. So our second part of our formula is the redefine, which is really when we work together, it's redefining things for people and, all of that. But I'd love to hear from you. Has there been a really sort of difficult moment or really kind of life-changing moment that changed things for you, changed the way you looked at things, really, redefined what life was going to look like for you?
Oh, I mean, I've had so many. So the reason I'm thinking about it is because I'm like, oh my God, which one do I share?
And look, we all have several, but if you can think of one, that would be really good.
Yeah, I'll talk about, because I think it's really on par with what your brand is about and what your mission is about. So I've got one that I think will be really good for this podcast. I had touched on it earlier where I have endless energy. I thought that I had endless energy, and I had this big personality, this big energy, and I have always been really ambitious, very driven, and anything I put my mind to, I've been able to create. And I just knew that from quite a young age. So there was kind of, that was a pro and a con. The pro of that, knowing that I could do it, the con being that I didn't take action on that for quite a long time because I probably wasn't ready to receive the gifts of the fruits of that labor. And so it took me quite a long time to really step into that power. But when I did, it was 2017 when I first started my business. And in 2017, I went, for lack of a better word, balls to the wall. And I went really hard. Like I did it like I do everything, 100%, full in, all ambition, all fire. I'm big Aries energy. So it was just all in. And I did that. And, I didn't sleep. I wasn't eating properly. I stopped exercising. I was like, and the reason I did all those things was I was so passionate about what I was bringing to the world. My first business was about helping women find themselves and find their hobbies and create time for themselves, which is something that, I to this day still see women struggle to do. And it was something that was so on my heart that I really wanted to bring into this world. And I was so passionate about that. Without realizing, I started self-sacrificing to bring something to this world that was so powerful and so potent, and just thinking that my energy was limitless. And over the next 18 months, my body was trying to show me the signs that I needed to slow down. I was working 7 days a week. I was, so much extrovert energy. Like I was going to these workshops every weekend. I was holding people's trauma. I was, speaking to women on a daily basis about really big stuff. I was in my social media. I was running a business. Like we had team members. I had 13 team members. It was just very big energy. And I did it straight for 18 months. And I was tired, I was not looking after myself. I put on a lot of weight. I felt sluggish. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel myself. I didn't feel attractive. I didn't feel my best version of myself, but I was so fiercely committed to delivering what I promised I would deliver and also what I said I would deliver that the burnout started to hit in phases. And I think people talk about burnout, and burnout is, it's a very real thing. And I think burnout definitely happens in stages. Like I
Mhm.
ignored the initial stage of burnout, which was just being tired and lethargic and, having no energy. I pushed through that because I was just like, don't be lazy, keep going,
Mhm.
So I pushed through that version and got a second wind, which took out all of the energy of my body, until one day when I got a rash. And the rash was all over my body. And the doctors said that they had never seen this kind of rash before. It was really not a common thing. And it was itchy, like burning itchy. And it was on my face. It was on my neck. It was on my lower back. It was across my breasts. Like it was all over my body. And I remember at the time I was flying to Sydney with Tim for a mastermind, and we were staying in a hotel, and we were in this event together, and I had to wear a high neck, it was middle of summer, and I had to wear a high neck jumper and stockings and boots and stuff because I was just so embarrassed about these like crazy like red rash that was like ravaging my body. And I was putting makeup on to cover it up, which obviously is only going to exacerbate it more. And I remember laying in bed in the hotel room at night and having a wet washcloth on me because I was burning up so much. And even at this point, I was like, it'll go away. It's fine. It's fine. It'll go away. So I found some creams, and they said that the likelihood this rash was induced by stress was very high. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, cool.
Just yeah, on to the next.
On to the next thing. Like, sick. Can we just get rid of this thing so I can go back to normal programming, please? Because this is very annoying, right?
Yeah.
And so I just kept going. And the rash did go away, luckily, thankfully. But within probably about 4 months from that point of continuing the way that I was continuing, not really changing anything, I woke up one morning with a bit of a weird tingle down my neck. And so when I would put my head forward, my body would kind of do this weird electric shock that would run down my back and into my feet just for a split second. And I was like, that's so bizarre. Anyway, I was hanging out with my mum for her birthday, and I told her about it. My mum's been a nurse her whole life. And so she was like, oh, and she currently works for the Multiple Sclerosis Society. And she said to me, oh, that sounds like an MS symptom. And I was like, oh, no, mum, like, of course it's not. Like, don't be like so silly. Of course it's not. And she was like, but how funny would it be if it was? Like, and we kind of just almost like had a laugh about it because of how ridiculous that coincidence would be, right? So we had a little laugh about it. We went for a massage, had a nice day for her birthday. The next day is my husband's birthday. We were actually going down south of Perth, a couple of hours away for a getaway. And that night we had dinner, we had a few wines. And the next morning I woke up and my whole body was numb. And I couldn't feel it. I was putting my hands on my chest and I couldn't feel my chest. I couldn't feel my own hands touching my body. I couldn't write. I couldn't hold a pen because I just had no motor function in my hands.
Terrifying, scary.
So terrifying. And I was like, it must be a pinched nerve. Just kept ignoring my body, just consistently ignoring it. And in the end, a couple of weeks later, I called a doctor, and she was like a very, very close doctor friend of mine. And she said, Steph, that sounds like MS. I think that you need to come in for an MRI. And it takes quite a long time to get a diagnosis for MS. So 8 painstaking weeks of realizing that this actually might be MS, and I actually might lose all motor function in the next 30 years, really reframed for me what was important in life and how much I needed. And then doing so much research, like I went right down the rabbit hole. And I found Joe Dispenza, and, I really, really was like, okay, this is an autoimmune disease. So I think that if I've created this within my body, I can heal this within my body. Right. And so I really went down the route of healing it in my body. Started the game-changing moment was realizing that I actually might have this diagnosis, and I started eating better. I worked a lot less. I meditated for an hour a day. I went to the gym and moved my body. I realized that work wasn't everything. It was nothing if I didn't have my health. And so from that moment on, things really changed. I put in really strict boundaries. I asked for more support in my life. I looked after myself physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically, so that I could make sure that I never, ever got into that position again. And in the end, it was a a diagnosis of something called transverse myelitis, which is usually a once-off event, but can be a precursor to MS. So it's something that I still maintain and manage every single day.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, again, sometimes talking through an event, we think that we're over it or that it doesn't trigger us, but sometimes it can be the 100th time we tell a story that it goes, oh, I remember that and really feel it. And I guess something, if you're into Joe Dispenza as well, you know, one of the things is like the body keeps score, right? Like the mind and the body are not separate. And so if we're having psychological stress, you know, all that cortisol damages our organs, damages our skin, our kidneys, our liver. And, you know, we need those to process everything. And so as I work with high functioning women, they're living in a state of fight or flight, like get it done, adrenaline, cortisol, like rest, that no time for the wicked, like rest is no time for the wicked, right? So
I'll rest when I'm dead. I used to say that to myself all the time. I'll rest when I'm dead.
I
And then when
rest
you're
when I'm
actually
dead.
facing down the barrel of health crisis, you're like, I don't want to be dead.
Exactly. And so exactly what you're saying is something that's so common in a lot of women that I see, and something that it's one of the things that I ask about in the first or second session, and people think I'm just going, oh, so tell me about your health and all of that, and they think it's just more of like an intake question, very casual, but I'm trying to see, like, have you had some organ issues? Because that tells me you've been living in a fight, flight, high cortisol state for too long, and your body will force you to stop. So if you don't listen to the body cues, to your anxiety, when your anxiety is really big and you keep numbing it, your body will make you stop. Like it will, you know, I've had so many people go, I just crashed, like I couldn't get out of bed for weeks. And so that's what we want to stop, right? Is like listen to the cues, learn that rest is okay. It's not lazy, and we can get purpose not through doing, but through being. That is such a mindset shift, and it's not something that can happen easily if you've got conditioning around, oh, doing equals purpose and achievement, and I'm worthy through doing. So I love that you've shared that story, because it just, again, just reminds us all, like, none of that matters if your health's not there, and your health and your mind, the mind and the body, so important. So yeah, so tell us about what are the things that you did to recover from that kind of, did it shift things in business and in health? Because I know you touched on doing all the health things and getting rest that you didn't do before, but I'd love to hear, like, how did you rebuild from that moment?
Yeah, one thing, I think being an only child, and I think this is for all high functioning women anyway, or high achieving women. But one thing for me specifically that added to this was being an only child. I never really had a support system. And so I didn't have siblings that I could lean on, and I still don't to this day. Like my parents are quite like old and disabled, and there's no one else. It's just me. Like, so it's a lot of responsibility now as a grown adult, but also as a child, you learn to just fend for yourself. You learn to just play with yourself. You learn to just be independent on your own. And there are a lot of beautiful pros to that. But one of the cons I found out as a woman, as an older woman in life, as a, you know, late 20s, early 30s woman, was that I didn't know how to ask for help. And I know that's really common for women, but like I really didn't know, because I never had somebody who could help me break out of my bedroom, or somebody who would help me clean up the mess so dad wouldn't see, or I never had a partner in crime. I never had somebody that I could go to. And so I didn't know how to lean on people. I didn't know how to ask for help. And it was something that was a skill that I really had to develop. And it took months, maybe even a year, to develop that skill. It wasn't natural for me to pick up the phone and ask for help. It wasn't natural for me to turn to Tim and say, could you help out with this? Because it's always just been me. And so one things that I did that really changed things was I got a mindset coach. I got a coach. I got somebody in my corner who helped me to understand why I was attaching so much worth to my success, why I needed to prove to people that I was insert whatever it was that I was trying to achieve, why I felt the need to remain alone throughout that period and not ask for help, and really just to give me some insight into my own mind, into the moments that I created those belief systems, to understanding whether those belief systems are helping me and to help me rebuild new ones. And so I did quite a lot of work on myself throughout that period, both in health and in mental health. And that was a really big game changer for me. And the other thing was just realizing, and throughout these conversations I was having with this coach, realizing that, and it's something that I teach my clients all the time now, is this is your life's work. So it's not your year's work. It's not, you don't need to do it in the next 6 months. You don't need to do it in the next year. You don't need to do it in the next 2 years. I know multi-millionaire empire builders that started at 40.
Yeah.
They started at 50. I know actresses that didn't get famous till they were 60, and so whatever it is you're set out to achieve as this high functioning, ambitious woman, because we all have big goals, whatever that is, it's not like you have to do it this year, this month. Like, you can take your time. And giving myself that permission really allowed me to like slow down.
Absolutely. And you know what's so funny about this as well is, as you were talking and you were like, oh, it took me like 6 months to a year to learn how to ask for help. I'm like, girlfriend, it takes people a whole lifetime sometimes. So the fact that you did that so efficiently and so fast, again, that's, I love my, my high functioning, high achieving women, because we have so many of the same stories of getting worse through achievement, and maybe only getting affection when we did something, like being told I love you when you get like a really good report card, or you did really well in sport, or you look a certain way or whatever, and not really getting that validation and expectation of, just sitting on the couch with your parents or your partner and just them going, hey, I love you and you're awesome. And you're not doing anything, you're just being. And I think we all, at times, we need someone to just remind us, like, we're awesome as we are. And that we need to sort of let go of some of that conditioning, and asking for help is a shattering of like the facade that a lot of the time we unconsciously create, right? Like, we create a persona without even realizing it. And so when we ask for help, it's a really vulnerable thing to say, hey, how I'm this person who's like A grade, gets all this shit done on top, I'm not coping. Like, that's big. That's a really big thing, right?
And it's a big thing. And also the conversation, like, as a woman who's had that conversation many times, that conversation, the first few times, is gut-wrenching. And it is earth-shattering. Like, it's, the first time I reached out to a friend and just said, she said, how are you? And the first time I admitted, because I'm the strong friend, right? And so, which you would hear a lot. And so the first time she asked me if I was okay, and I said, I'm actually not okay. It broke me. Like, the next 45 minutes was just me heaving and crying and like unleashing, right? And for any woman that's in that position right now, where you know that you need to ask for help and you are so terrified because it's going to break every belief system that is in your body right now that tells you that you don't need anybody and you're okay and you're strong and you're independent, it's really hard to do that, but it does get easier. Like, now I'll just walk outside and be like, hey, Tim, could you please help me with this so I can energetically get on with my day? I literally, just before we got on this podcast today, got off a meeting with my operations manager in my business. And I said to her, what do I need to do to skill you up to make more decisions in this business? Because I need more space and I need you to be able to make these decisions. So what does that need to look like? And that's not because I'm bad. That's not because, I am repeating old habits. And that's not because I can't cope on my own. It's because I deserve to be supported by the people in my world. And so I think it's like changing the language for yourself, that like, people want to support you just like you want to support others.
Oh, absolutely. And again, as high achieving women, there's that perfectionism that comes in, and it takes a level of trust, because there's this feeling of, oh, I can do this, or I can do this maybe better than other people can, so I'll just do it. I'll just keep taking it on. And it's like, at some point you need to delegate, and we all need to fail. Like, I think, and a fail, I mean it as in, we all need to make a mistake and grow from it, learn from it. So it's not the, generic meaning of like you failed and it's over. A lot of high achieving women have never failed. And so it gets scarier. Anything you've avoided gets scarier, right? And so if you've never had something not go the way you wanted it because you've worked your ass off, it's really scary the first time something doesn't go the way you thought it was going to go, or it doesn't pan out. So there's sort of that of letting yourself fail a little bit, and even pushing yourself, go, I'm not going to be a perfectionist, and I'm going to leave the typo in the email. Like, oh my God, how scary. I'm going to leave the typo. I'm going to send an email that I said I was going to attach something to and not send the attachment, just to expose myself to like little incremental, like, mistakes are part of life, and it's okay. And no one's judging you, and no one goes, gosh, what a hot mess she is. She didn't attach the attachment to the email, didn't check the typo. Gah. Like, and if those kind of people are in your world anyway, cut them out. Like, you don't need that anyway. So after going through all of that, like, again, tremendously, I can't even imagine. I haven't had a health scare like that where I haven't been able to feel my body before, and coming out of that and all of that. Incredible. So thank you for sharing that. It must have been terrifying. So what do you do now to sort of maintain that, to go, you know what, I'm going to have these moments of vulnerability, of fear, of slipping back into old habits where I just want to go, do, but, I could sleep when I'm dead. What do you do when you catch yourself saying those things or feeling like that again? How do you keep yourself aligned so that you're not on that same track to burn out again?
Yeah, I think I've just become really in tune with my body. So I'm still ambitious. I will still push the limits of my energy systems. But because I'm so much better at listening now, I just stop. I just flat out stop. And I think the mindset that I was running before was a mindset of guilt. I have a really big guilt complex. It's been handed down to me from my mother, who I'm sure got it from her mother. And so my guilt complex is that's my life's work in this lifetime, is to overcome my guilt complex. And so for me personally, for example, like 2 weeks ago, I hit an energy slump. Like I felt it. I was like, I'm pushing. And on that weekend, I had a couple of catch-ups with a couple of girlfriends booked in, and I was supposed to be seeing my parents. I didn't want to. I wanted to lay on the couch and sleep. I wanted to read my book. I wanted to have a bath. I wanted to make time to shave my legs, just like be a human being. And so before, what would have happened was that my guilt complex would have been like, well, you can't let those people down. Well, no, you must go. You haven't seen them in so long. You're such a bad friend. Blah, 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 blah. Now my guilt complex is like, now I'm like, shh, Steph needs sleep. So Steph's going to cancel. That's it.
How good. That's incredible.
Yeah. So I would say that, look, I'm not perfect. While I may have built an incredible business and I may have done a lot of work on this, as an ambitious woman and a high achiever, this is a ceiling that I hit repetitively. It's a constant, it's a constant repeat cycle for me. But I'm getting so much better at acknowledging, like, even way before the burnout hits, like I start to feel a little bit more like I wake up in the morning and I'm tired and I'm like, okay, there's something here. Like, and so now like yesterday morning I woke up and I was tired because I went to Snoop Dogg and I stayed out later than my usual bedtime. And so I woke up and I was tired for 3 days in a row afterwards. And I said, I got on a meeting this morning with my team and I said, I need a break. So next week, can you move all of these things in my calendar so that I can rest?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, that's incredible. I love that you've got all these habits now. And your story, what you're sharing about the guilt complex, I'm sure there are so many people listening who are like, yep, that's me. And and as a high achiever myself as well, it's that balancing your energies, right? Like, we don't want to deny that we are often really good at what we do. We are often quite high in the world of what we do. And that's okay. But it's kind of going, okay, like, yeah, like you're saying, like, I've got a launch coming up. I'm going to be exhausted after the launch. So am I going to plan an event straight after? No. Like,
And also, like, if I don't feel like doing the launch, I get to push it out. That's my choice. And so, like, even though it lets people down, and even though, you know, like my social media manager has done a lot of work, even though, you know, I pushed my podcast out for 6 months, even though I had people that were waiting on me, people who needed it, people who were paying. But I was like, I'm not ready. And ultimately, like, this is me and this is my energy and it's my health that's at stake here. So I'm not going to push the boundary of it. And I think it's about really honoring that for yourself. And you'll know the best thing that you can ever do to, like, for yourself, is just to honor what you need first. And as the ambitious leaders, as the high achievers, like, people look to us, people rely on us, people need us. I have a whole team of people who need me. I have family who need me. You know, I have multiple businesses with teams that need me, and I can't show up for them or be anything for them if I don't look after myself.
Absolutely. And we need to model that for each other, because you know what? We're going to have really creative people in our business that maybe don't have the same traits as the high achieving, high functioning women, but we need them, and we need to respect that their rest and their development is different, and that, you know, all of that. But I think modeling that, hey guys, I'm just having a mental health day. You might see me out and about going to a cafe, and that's just what I'm doing for me. Like, again, sometimes there's this thing of like, oh my gosh, I called in a sick day. I have to sit at home and feel guilty on the couch all day. Like, I can't possibly, like, just take a day where I go to my favorite cafe and eat my favorite food and, you know, go for a walk. Like, it feels like I'm not allowed to be out. It's technically a sick day, you know? So it's, I think all of this is just so important. I think there's so many lessons that everything you shared, Steph, I think there's going to be women out there going, oh my gosh, I totally relate. I absolutely relate. And I think the biggest thing, Steph, I think that I love about this podcast that we've done today is showing that you can learn so much about yourself in such a short amount of time. Like, I think people think, yeah, I mean, yes, therapy, I'm not going to say that it's fast, like it, and coaching, it takes a while, but all it takes is one light bulb session sometimes, and it's like cracks open something, you know, and it's the little subtle changes that we often miss, like going, actually, I'm not going to have any more meetings for today. Like, that's, it's like, it's not always obvious the results of the coaching and the therapy, but again, realizing like the person you were 2 months ago, 3 months ago would have never done that, or having a weekend where you don't make plans. Like, it's little things that other people don't necessarily see in us, but make a huge impact to how we are long term, right?
Yeah, for sure. And like, the women who get to work with you in your containers and, you know, in your presence, like, it's so important for them to understand that it's definitely not probably a 6 or a 12-week process. Like, it will take time. And I look back at the money and the time that I've invested into my, you know, mindset coaches, my spiritual coaches, my energetic coaches, and like, I wouldn't change a single thing. Like, even though sometimes I get on those calls and I'd be like, I don't even know what I need today, I don't even know what, there would always be something that would come up, there would always be a slight shift. And then 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the track, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe how far we've come, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're shimmering of that. And look, this work is a journey, but I think you've shown like you actually can make progress, and like huge progress, and such a short amount of time, and model that for the people around you. You know, how lucky are your teams and everyone who's inside of your businesses to have like such a leader like that. You know, a lot of leaders still have that old mentality of like hustle, grind, push through the pain, like no pain, no gain, like, you know, that kind of like mentality, you know. So I think it's really lucky that you've been able to model that for them, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like a lot of this conversation, like, if for anyone that's listening, I would just say as well, like, I don't, you know, and I know that you know this, but like, I don't do it for them. And I just stopped living for everybody else. And I think once I consciously made that decision, like, that I'm going to let people down, that I'm not perfect, that, you know, once I consciously made that decision and accepted, I think there's a level of acceptance that comes into that. Like, but ultimately I have to just do what is best for me, and the right people are always going to be there, and they're going to love that, and they're going to want to support that, and they're going to want to be around that. And so for me personally, it's like, yeah, maybe I'm a great leader for my team. There's part of me that's like, I probably let them down so much because I change my mind all the freaking time. But ultimately, maybe it's giving them a permission slip, but that's not even like, that's maybe that's a benefit of why I do it. But the reason that I do it is because I need it ultimately. And if that maybe inspires somebody, then that's great. But I have to do it for me. It's not, you know what I mean? I think so much of us as high achieving women, we do it because we're like, I need to be a good leader. I need to be this. I need to do this. And I think high achievement often comes from needing praise and needing validation and needing something from others.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, if anyone who's listening, like the more that you can start to honor yourself and what you need and not living for others, that's when you'll really start to see massive shifts.
Absolutely. It's like, yeah, exactly what you're saying. And people can almost feel that in authenticity that we a lot of the time don't realize, like, am I doing this decision for me? Am I going to this event for me? Am I creating this for me? Or is it because I want to look good to, you know, old mate from high school who still stalks me in my Instagram stories? Like, you know, like
Totally.
really being clear about, am I making decisions for me? And as a byproduct, I think that's when your team can go, oh, like she's just got this grounded energy and I want that. So what does, you know, so it's not doing it for them, but it's just kind of with just being who you are leads the way, if that makes sense. So
yeah, absolutely.
Steph, it was so incredible to have you today. I loved this. I know everyone's going to get so much out of it who listens to this. So before you go, if people want to connect with you, you know, find you, where can they find you? Where can they connect with the amazing energy that you are?
Oh, thanks, babe. If you want to connect with me, if you want to have a conversation with me, if you have any questions, the best place is in my Instagram because that's where I spend more time than I should. So if you want to find me, you can come find me at Steph Gorton __ on Instagram. But I'm always down for a chat. My DMs are always open.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for today. Again, Steph has an amazing business coaching place. You can find all of that on her Instagram, but I, for one, can vouch that it's an incredible space. So if you're someone who's in business and, you know, wants that support, you know who to go to. So thanks so much for today, Steph.
Thank you for having me.